anyone can be prosecuted for conspiracy if they help someone either get or plan to get an abortion in another state.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Abortion rights are workers' rights. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. And the decision to impose the religious views of a minority of the country by unelected and unaccountable people in our government is going to have, this is not an opinion, this will have disastrous economic, social, and emotional tolls on working people across the country, and particularly in states like Alabama, where zealots in Montgomery have declared it the policy of the state at threat of gunpoint, as so-called small government folks like to emphasize. It's going to take a particular toll on people in states like ours, where religious zealots have made it the policy of the state that a child raped by her father ought to be forced, again, at threat of gunpoint by the state, to carry a pregnancy to term. That is the official policy of the state of Alabama. A 12-year-old girl raped by her father at threat of gunpoint, at the barrel of a gun, has to go through 9 months of pregnancy. That is the policy of the state of Alabama. That is the policy enacted by zealots and cowards. The zealots who are the true believers, who think that it is good that a child who is raped should have to carry a pregnancy to term. There are people that think that is good. There are also people who are cowards, who I talked to when the law in 2017, I believe it was passed, that made this the official policy of the state of Alabama. Representative Rex Reynolds, I believe it was. I spoke to him and said that this is not, registered my concern. And it was either him or somebody else. It was a representative from Huntsville, a senator or representative from North Alabama area, that said that this is not the policy I would actually want to enact. This is to challenge Roe. Once Roe is overturned, we will implement exceptions. So,
I guess we'll find out.
I guess we're going to find out. But even the exceptions, these are not real. These are fabricated. Because let's just actually think about materially, practically, logistically, what does that mean? You're going to say a woman, a child, somebody who gets pregnant is going to come to a healthcare facility, and they're going to say, I was raped. I want to terminate my pregnancy. How do you prove that? These cases take years criminally, so is there some lower threshold of proof that you have to get a pregnancy? And then who's going to do it? Who's going to perform an abortion for people who were raped in Alabama? Because if the government, again, at the barrel of a gun, as these small government weirdos like to remind us, at the barrel of a gun, what is the punishment for people who perform abortions? You're looking at either the doctor believing the woman and terminating the pregnancy at the potential risk of the loss of their license, of jail time, of a fine. How many doctors are going to do that? Even at the risk of the life of the mother. Sam Cedar pointed out on the Majority Report that there is not a switch that flips, a light that turns on that says, okay, The life of the mother is now in danger. It is time to offer the option to terminate this pregnancy. It is a subjective opinion by the doctor. And so they're going to have to be weighing, on the one hand, this person has a 10% chance of dying, a 20% chance, a 30% chance, 50% chance of dying if they go through with this pregnancy. And then on the other hand, they have to weigh, I could go to jail if I do the medically correct thing and offer this person the option to terminate a pregnancy because their life is in danger. And at what point does the legislature say, even theoretically, that, okay, at 10% chance of dying, is that acceptable to the zealots in Montgomery? A 10% chance of dying and you can terminate the pregnancy. What about a 20% chance? And of course, again, this is all theoretical because doctors won't do it. Women will die. Women will be permanently disabled. They will be thrown into economic destitution because of this, because of the zealots in Montgomery. And this is, of course, not to say that people in these most extreme circumstances are the only ones that deserve bodily autonomy. Of course not. Everyone deserves bodily autonomy. That's a fundamental right. But that is what this reactionary activist Supreme Court is enabling. That is what the religious zealots in Montgomery actively want. They want a world. They voted for a world where children have to carry incest rape pregnancies to term. That is how far they're willing to go to enforce their Christian theocracy that they've got in their head on the rest of the population. It's sickening. And before you think about going across state lines to get an abortion, it is the policy of the state of Alabama that is a crime too. Christopher England, representative in Tuscaloosa, chair of the Alabama Democratic Party, pointed out on Twitter that abortions are now illegal in Alabama, and it doesn't stop there. Not only can anyone, even the woman seeking the abortion, be prosecuted, but also anyone can be prosecuted for conspiracy if they help someone either get or plan to get an abortion in another state. The Attorney General of the United States asserts that it is a bedrock constitutional principle to be able to do this, to be able to cross state lines and acquire an abortion in states where it is legal. But who knows, with this reactionary activist judiciary, if freedom of association, if freedom of speech to be able to advise people, who knows if that right is going to be protected? The right to go to a state where religious zealots have not tried to impose the ideas they've got in their head on the rest of us.
And that's assuming it's even possible from a practical standpoint, right, economically.
Because think about the people in Mobile. How far are they going to have to travel to be able to get an abortion?
How much money will they have to save up? How much time would they have to take off work? Would Illinois be the closest state to somebody in southern Alabama that they could get an abortion? Something like that. Yeah, it's
a 16-hour road trip, a flight.
It's a form of class warfare. This is part of a broader class warfare upon working class people because, make no mistake, wealthy individuals will still be able to access abortions.
Of course.
The bosses and politicians, their wives and sisters and daughters and mistresses will still have access to abortion. It's working people, and even to some extent middle class people, who are going to have a difficult time accessing reproductive health care. So there again, we see the ways in which our economic system, which has so stratified folks, plays out. It affects every single right that we have and that we don't have.
It's insane. And of course, unions have a role to play in this.
Absolutely.
Media unions are leading the way in the most obvious first response, collectively bargaining for abortion coverage in our union contracts. Now, again, I have no idea how the tyrants in Montgomery, I have no idea how the law that is going that they have put out there to make it a criminal conspiracy to help somebody get an abortion. I have no idea how that is going to play into that. I have no idea what the courts are, what the tyrants in the court system are going to decide about the legality of that. But right now, anyway, media unions are collectively bargaining for abortion coverage in their union contracts. Angela Fu at Poynter reported that the three largest unions representing journalists, the News Guild, the Writers Guild of America East, and SAG-AFTRA, have all released statements condemning the draft. This was back before the opinion was actually released. They released statements condemning a draft of a Supreme Court majority opinion. And members and units within those unions are working to add provisions to their contracts that would ensure their health insurance covers abortion care. Unions do have to go beyond that, though, particularly for working people in states like ours in the Deep South who are governed by people who reckon the government ought to decide what we can do with our bodies, not the workers themselves. Connor Lewis relayed a portion of a conversation he had with Dr. Rebecca Given, a professor of labor and industrial relations at Rutgers University, where she suggested that unions ought to be using union release time to do abortion access work of providing transportation and child care, similar to how many unions use release time for elections. That's another thing that unions should be doing. But it is up to us, rank and file working folks, to do the work of building our unions into strong militant forces willing to flex our muscles to defend these rights at the ballot box as well. We need a labor movement so strong that politicians quake at the thought of defying us and defying the bodily autonomy of our members. To make that a reality, we've got to organize. To round it out, though, lest you think that this is the end of the thing, lest you think that this is the one bad thing that the Supreme Court is going to do, and then it's going to and now this is going to be the status quo. We're going to have all the other rights that we used to have. It's just we can't get an abortion anymore. This is not the end. And even this, remember, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, this is a total betrayal of trust by these judges, as if anyone should have had faith in them to begin with, because they said under oath they should be impeached for this, for lying under oath to Congress. They said under oath that they would not overturn Roe, that this was established precedent, and they would respect established precedent. They would not overturn Roe. They should be impeached.
It's almost like letting 6 to 9 human beings with lifetime appointments and zero democratic accountability control a country of over 300 million people. It's almost like that's a bad idea.
Almost. They should be impeached. I remember on talk radio when that was the crazy thing, when overturning Roe was the crazy thing. For people like me on the left saying that these reactionary tyrants are going to take away our bodily autonomy. I remember on talk radio being told they're not going to take away Roe. That's crazy. They wouldn't do that. Look, they said as much. And why wouldn't we believe them? Well, the talking point after this has already shifted. Well, no. The talking point shifted after the leaked memo, the leaked decision was put out. The talking point for a couple of weeks was, don't worry, it's just abortion. All your other rights are safe. That was a lie, and they knew it as well. In a concurrence to the opinion of the court, Clarence Thomas, alleged sex offender, Clarence Thomas said that we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. Substantive due process is the grounds upon which the constitutional right to abortion was granted. And it was on that same basis, substantive due process, that many other rights have been given to us, that have been recognized. Griswold recognized the right to contraception. Lawrence invalidated sodomy laws. Obergefell recognized the right to marriage equality. All of these have been explicitly called out in a concurrence to the opinion of the court by Clarence Thomas.
Well, and it's not just that. It's not just that, because this very week, abortion rights weren't the only rights to be gutted by the Supreme Court. Just this week, we saw a ruling that the police can no longer be sued for ignoring your Miranda rights.
Yeah. As if we needed more reason to be skeptical of the cops.
States, we saw a case involving Maine and a school funding lawsuit where now the state of Maine will be required to fund private religious schools, which does not bode well for the future of public education and the threats by voucher programs and charter schools. We also saw ruling where states need not provide medical care. That could exonerate prisoners. They did expand gun rights. Now, gun rights, yes, they're willing to expand that, but on virtually every other aspect of your life, they are in the process of restricting rights and moving this country backwards. You know, we already have Gilded Age levels of inequality in economic system, you know, an economic system that very much resembles the Gilded Age. So it looks like these folks are determined to make sure our politics and our culture matches that. They want to bring us back to the 19th century. And I guess it's next week when we can expect a decision involving the EPA, because the Supreme Court is poised to completely gut the EPA's ability to fight climate change. And the entire
administrative state, the entire ability of the government to function is based on the ability of Congress to delegate decision-making authority to the executive agency, to the executive branch. There is nothing in the Constitution saying that Congress can't do that. There's absolutely nothing, but these tyrants in the judiciary, activist judicial tyrants, have made up out of whole cloth a doctrine to restrict the ability of Congress to delegate. It's insane. From the highest, let's face it, lawmaking body in the land. I know that people like to pretend that the Supreme Court is not a legislative body, but, that it's not political. I think that's silly. We have a direct attack on fundamental freedoms, the right to bodily autonomy, and the opening of the door to having state sex Gestapo inspections, and Democrats are wholly ill-equipped to handle the moment. Joe Biden is not calling for an expansion of the Supreme Court. Joe Biden is not calling to remove the filibuster. These are the only two options that are available to the governing party who, let's remember, hold the House, the Senate, and the presidency. These are the only two options that the governing party has to reassert women's right to bodily autonomy at a national level. There are other things that the executive branch can do to limit the damage
Yes, absolutely.
But those remain the only options that would return us to the status quo. And there are some things that the executive branch could do that would not return us to the status quo, but would limit the damage that he's not doing. They could set up abortion clinics on federal land inside red states. They could provide federal telehealth service for free abortion pills. They could be funding abortion clinics and travel vouchers in nearby states. None of that is waving a magic wand.
It could be declared a national health emergency.
As Kate Willett said on Twitter, none of that is waving a magic wand, and it is all within the authority of the executive branch, and they're not doing it. There's no indication. The only thing that we have seen out of the executive branch is the Attorney General Merrick Garland saying, you have the right to travel. If you can find the time, if you can find the money, if you can find the people willing to take you, if, God forbid, if you're a child, God forbid, if you're a child whose relative raped you, you can find a family member who gives a damn about you to take you across state lines to get you the health care that you need. If you can find somebody like that, Merrick Garland says you have a right to it. Wow! Wow!
I think it goes back to your point earlier that we have to organize. We need a mass movement of everyday people. That's the only way we're going to be able to roll back these attacks on us. That's the only way we're going to be able to respond to the crisis after crisis after crisis that we're facing as a society is through mass democratic engagement. We can't rely on Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. I think the evidence is pretty clear there. We need mass movements, the likes of which we haven't seen in this country since the 60s and since the 30s and since the Reconstruction era.
It's insane. And these people, Nancy Pelosi is sending out fundraising emails asking us for $15 so that we can win the midterms. Like, lady, you've got power right now. You've got power right now.
And what are you going to do with the money? Give it to more anti-choice
Seriously,
Democrats?
do not give money to the DNC.
Give it to the Yellowhammer Fund.
Give it to the Yellowhammer Fund. Give it to Holler Health Justice in West Virginia. I will not be making any donations to the DNC or the DCCC this election cycle. I never have, and I have no plans to ever in the future. And it is, I doubt I will be giving money to any Democrat politician. Give it to the Yellowhammer Fund. Give it to people who have been on the ground fighting for this, who have been actually providing the goods for people, and not the people who were in Texas last week campaigning for an anti-abortion Democrat. That's Nancy Pelosi. That's Joe Biden. That's Jim Clyburn. The leadership of the Democrats all endorsed Henry Cuellar, the last anti-abortion Democrat in the House, against a pro-choice progressive challenger.
Right, and we just had a report.
Now they want us to give them $15?
And on that same subject, we just had a report from Means Morning News this week on how the DNC is actually giving money, in some cases spending money on Republicans. They are trying this strategy, which, failed spectacularly with Trump, where they are trying to do the Pied Piper strategy of elevating the craziest Republicans they can find, thinking that that'll help them in the general election. So you don't even. So if you respond to Nancy's text and you give her $15, for all you know, it might actually help sponsor a Republican advertisement in Colorado. So yes, find organizations like Yellowhammer Fund, like the Powerhouse, that are doing real reproductive justice work on the ground, that are going to be organizing to provide transportation for women, to provide access to health care. That's where your money would be much better spent.
And these people, if they want to earn our votes, if they want to earn our money, they should be calling on Chuck Schumer to get rid of the filibuster.
Right.
They should be calling on Joe Biden to call on them to get rid of the filibuster. They should be calling on Joe Biden to support expanding the Supreme Court. These are all things that are within their power right now, and the response to, oh, you don't want them to abolish the filibuster because then the Republicans won't have it. And it's like, tell me, just walk through what you're saying. Walk through what you're saying. You're telling me that this radical reactionary Republican Party, when they get power next, God forbid in 2024, they hold the House, the Senate, and the presidency. God forbid. God forbid. Heaven help us. Lord help us. God forbid that happens. You're telling me that President Trump, President DeSantis, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, House Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are going to stand up to anti-abortion activists and say, who reckon that it's murder, who reckon that that's murder, and they're going to stand up and say, no, the filibuster is more important than preserving life in California. Yeah.
Give me a break.
Give me a break. You live in a fantasy land. The second that they take power again, now that Roe is overturned, the second they take power again, and they hold all three of those bodies of power, the House, the Senate, and the presidency, we're going to have a national abortion ban nationwide. And if they have to, they'll get rid of the filibuster to do it.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, look over the past 50 years, and the right wing has shrunk in their popularity, but has grown in the actual power that they hold and the power that they wield. They have gotten the goods for their people. The right wing has produced results, and they keep winning time after time after time, while Democrats have not.
5 of these 6 people were appointed by presidents who lost the popular vote. By the way, it's worth mentioning. So don't give your money to Democrats, is basically, that's the thing. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.